So I want you to picture this scenario for a second. You're standing inside this hyper-secure, climate-controlled vault.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
That's right. And sitting right there on the concrete floor, stacked in these massive pallets, is $4 trillion. Trillion. With a T.
Yeah.
But it's completely locked up. Like, the pallets are wrapped in steel cables. They're gathering dust, totally immobile.
Right.
Now, I want you to look through this reinforced glass window into the very next room. And there's another vault.
Okay, what's in that one?
Inside that second room, you've got $327 billion in liquid cash. Just sitting there.
Wow.
Vibrating with energy, completely desperate to be deployed. And, the people in the second room badly want the assets locked in the first room.
Yeah.
And the people in the first room desperately need that liquid cash.
But they practically can't get to each other.
Exactly. They're literally inches away. But the only plumbing connecting these two modern vaults is made of, I don't know.
19th century cast iron pipes.
Yeah. 19th century cast iron pipes. And the pipes are stuffed with paper, they leak constantly, and they're guarded by a guy holding a physical Rolodex who charges you this massive toll every single time you try to pass a dollar bill through.
It's insane.
It is. Welcome to today's Innovation Unpacked Deep Dive. I've been looking forward to this one all week because, honestly, we are looking at a market failure so massive, so structural, that it almost feels intentional.
Well, it feels intentional because in many ways it is intentional.
Right.
We're talking about an infrastructure failure on a global macroeconomic scale. We are looking at the private market's secondary liquidity space, and those 19th century pipes you're talking about, they aren't just naturally broken, they are functioning exactly as they were designed to by the middlemen who currently control them.
Which is wild. So today we are unpacking this incredibly provocative manifesto by Mike Boysen.
It's a great piece.
It really is. And going forward, we're just going to refer to this as the venture proof analysis or the dossier. And the mission of this Innovation Unpacked deep dive is singular. We want to explore how to stop accepting these massive 20 to 40% capital haircuts as just a permanent, unchangeable feature of private markets.
Because it doesn't have to be.
Exactly. We're going to dig into the mechanics of how to liberate over $296.7 million in recoverable strategic value annually.
Look, before we can even start mapping out how to liberate all that capital, we have to thoroughly examine the prison it's currently locked in.
Yeah, it's fair.
Because if we don't understand, the thickness of the walls and the specific architecture of the locks...
Any escape route just sounds like science fiction.
Exactly. The inherited narrative in the market right now, the story that every fund manager and institutional investor tells themselves, is that this 20 to 40% illiquidity haircut is just a natural law of physics.
Right. They just accept it.
They really believe it's a permanent feature of private market risk.
You hear it constantly in boardrooms. Like, oh, well, these are private assets. We don't have a daily ticker tape. They're just inherently hard to value.
That is the exact defense. They're opaque, they're bespoke, they're complex.
Yeah.
But the venture-proof analysis systematically dismantles that myth. It proves that the haircut is not a valuation complexity problem at all.
It's not about the math of the asset.
No, it is a coordination failure. The fragmentation of the private secondary market isn't a bug. The fragmentation is the product.
Wow.
It's a product designed, maintained, and heavily defended by intermediaries.
So let's actually map that out, because the dossier introduces a term for this that I literally can't stop thinking about. It calls it the bilateral prison.
Such a great term.
It's such a visceral way to describe the market structure. Think about trying to sell a multi-million-dollar estate. You hire a real estate agent, right?
Right.
But instead of listing it on the open market, your agent only lets 3 people look at it.
Just 3.
Just 3. And to make matters worse, all 3 of those potential buyers have been explicitly told by the agent that you are facing foreclosure and you need cash by Friday.
I'd take that analogy a step further, actually.
Yeah, right.
Your agent not only limits the buyer pool to 3 people, but they also legally prevent you from ever speaking to those buyers directly.
Oh, man.
You, as the seller of this private fund interest, are locked into a purely bilateral one-to-one negotiation with a single broker.
You're completely isolated.
Totally isolated. And that broker demands exclusive rights to your position. They are absolutely not broadcasting your asset to the broader market.
Because doing that would require them to share the data, right?
Exactly. Share the data and potentially split the fee with another broker. So they are exclusively calling 3 or 4 pre-existing relationships that they already have in their personal Rolodex.
Which means the entire concept of competitive price discovery is completely dead on arrival.
It doesn't exist. You literally can't comparison shop your asset because your listing agreement is exclusive to that one broker. And flip it around to the buyer's perspective, right? The buyer doesn't have to submit a highly competitive bid. They know the game.
You know they're the only ones at the table.
They know they are one of only 3 names on that broker's call sheet.
Yeah.
So what do? They lowball.
Of course they do.
The broker eventually pushes the deal through, collects their 3 to 7% in transaction fees.
Which is a massive cut.
Huge. And you, the seller, are forced to take a 30% haircut on the net asset value.
Yeah.
It's so vital for anyone listening to understand that this isn't a gap in the market. It is an intentional tax zone.
An intentional tax zone. I love that phrasing.
It's a wealth transfer mechanism designed explicitly to extract value from the seller and hand it to the intermediary and the distressed asset buyer.
Seeing the mechanics of that wealth extraction laid out so plainly is just wild. Like, you have this $4 trillion in net asset value, or NAV, trapped in these private funds. And that $327 billion in dry powder is just sitting there waiting to be deployed. The system is entirely rigged against the seller.
Absolutely.
But this brings up the obvious question. If the broker network is so predatory and literally everyone knows they are taking a 30% haircut, why don't sellers just bypass the brokers? Like, why don't they just pick up the phone and call the buyers themselves?
Because the actual physical mechanics of transferring a private fund interest from one party to another are an absolute bureaucratic nightmare.
It's not just handing over a stock certificate.
Not even close. The dossier breaks this down into a brutally inefficient 14-step manual gauntlet.
14 steps. And when we say manual, we mean people physically emailing PDFs back and forth, right?
We mean armies of junior analysts and paralegals executing highly repetitive analog tasks.
Just grinding through paperwork.
Let's look at the financial waste of this, because this is where the pragmatist in me just starts pulling my hair out.
Yeah, hit me with the math.
The dossier calculated the current manual execution costs of a single private market transfer. When you factor in the labor, the legal review, the back and forth communication, everything, it costs $1,575 per transaction in pure overhead.
$1,500 just to move paper.
Just to move the paper.
Yeah.
Now, contrast that with what the venture-proof analysis calls the physics floor.
Okay, what is the physics floor?
The physics floor is the theoretical true cost of executing that exact same transfer using modern digital cryptographic execution.
So, like, no humans.
No humans in the loop, just pure verified data transfer. That cost is $2.50.
I mean, pause on that math for a second.
Yeah.
We are talking about a 630x inefficiency multiplier.
630 times.
The current system costs 630 times more than it physically needs to. That isn't just friction. That is pure, unadulterated waste dragging down the entire asset class.
It is staggering. And when you look closely at those 14 steps, the dossier actually uses a 0.9 confidence interval to pinpoint step 8 as the absolute peak friction point of the entire process.
Step 8. What happens in step 8?
Step 8 is the phase where you negotiate terms and execute the actual transfer agreement.
Okay.
This is where the modern financial system suddenly devolves into, like, the 1980s.
Oh, no. Let me guess. Fax machines.
Worse. You have wet signatures required on physical documents. You have manual Know Your Customer KYC and anti-money laundering recertifications.
AML?
Yeah. A buyer has to prove who they are, where their money came from, and submit endless identity documents.
Even if they're a massive institution.
Even if they've done it 100 times before. And a human compliance officer has to sit there, read them, verify them, and approve them.
Wow.
Because of step 8 alone, a single transaction takes 60 to 90 days just to reach settlement.
60 to 90 days where your capital is essentially frozen in a void.
Totally frozen.
And this is where the dossier brilliantly brings in real options theory to explain the hidden cost of that delay.
Right.
Because if you think about how options work, a static position in a private fund isn't actually static at all.
No, it's constantly moving.
Right. It is a decaying option. Every single day you spend trapped in that 60 to 90-day settlement window, you are bleeding what options traders call theta, which is time decay.
Because the underlying reality of the asset is constantly shifting while your paperwork is just stalled on someone's desk.
Exactly. Over 3 months, macroeconomic volatility can hit. Interest rates change.
The fund's NAV can be restated by the general partner.
Or the buyer's financing could suddenly dry up. You are locked in this holding pattern where you have all the downside risk of holding the asset, but you can't actually touch the money.
And that delay has a massive measurable cost. It physically breaks deals.
Yeah.
The dossier shows that this friction leads to a 27% abandonment rate.
Wait, over a quarter of all initiated transactions just die?
It's just vanish.
That's insane.
Sellers get so exhausted by the bureaucracy. They get tired of the document remediation, the endless strings of legal emails asking for, one more signature on page 42.
Right, they just give up.
They throw their hands up. They tell the broker, forget it. It's not worth the brain damage. I'll just hold the asset.
They accept being trapped in the vault.
Exactly. The dossier calculates that this specific friction leaves $255.15 million in stranded opportunity cost on the table every single year.
$255 million. It's a staggering amount of stranded capital.
And I really want to emphasize something crucial here, because that 27% abandonment isn't just lost transaction fees for the brokers.
Right. It's bigger than that.
That represents widespread relationship destruction. We are talking about family offices, endowments, and institutions that genuinely needed that liquidity.
Yeah, they had a plan for that money.
They needed it to rebalance their portfolios, or to fund upcoming capital calls, or to manage generational wealth transfer.
And they just couldn't do it.
The underlying infrastructure failed them so completely that they were forced to abandon their entire financial strategy.
So let's zoom out and look at the institutional response to this.
Okay.
Because when massive financial institutions realize they're bleeding this much money, over $296 million in total strategic value, when you combine the operational waste with that stranded pipeline, they naturally try to build solutions.
Sure, they see a problem, they want to fix it.
But the dossier reveals why their immediate instinctive attempts to fix the problem are actually fatal traps.
This is arguably the most important analytical breakdown in the entire manifesto.
It really is.
The dossier maps out 3 distinct pathways that the industry attempts to take: Pathway A, Pathway B, and Pathway C.
Okay, let's go through them.
Let's start by dissecting the false hope of the first 2, because they look like progress, but they are actually dead ends.
So let's tackle Pathway A. The dossier labels this persona expansion.
Right.
The logic here is essentially taking your current broken system and aggressively marketing it to new types of users.
Expanding the user base.
Exactly. And the biggest target right now is family offices. Family offices globally manage over $4 trillion in wealth.
It's a massive pool of capital.
It's huge. They are highly sophisticated, but they are absolutely desperate for liquidity in their private portfolios. So a lot of incumbent platforms look at that and say, great, let's just take our existing broker-dealer model and sell it directly to family offices.
Yeah.
And on the surface, it feels like a massive, elegant lateral move to unlock new revenue.
It looks like growth on a quarterly earnings report, absolutely. But mathematically, it optimizes the exact wrong variable.
Right, because you haven't actually changed the underlying mechanics.
You haven't fixed a single structural flaw. You're simply bringing more inmates into the broken bilateral prison.
Yeah.
You aren't improving the price discovery mechanism. You aren't compressing that agonizing 60 to 90-day settlement timeline. You are just subjecting a brand new demographic to the exact same 30% haircut and the same extractive 3% broker fee.
It's just a cash grab.
It's a revenue grab that completely ignores the structural failure of the plumbing.
Okay, so when the smartest people in the room realize that just adding more users doesn't work, they pivot to Pathway B.
The tech solution.
Right. The dossier calls this the efficiency bridge, or sustaining innovation.
Mm-hmm.
This is the classic tech bro instinct.
Let's build an app for it.
Let's digitize the workflows. Let's build AI co-pilots to read the PDFs.
Yeah.
Let's automate data extraction and squeeze every possible margin of efficiency out of those manual processes.
And look, if you are an operations director at one of these firms, that sounds completely logical.
Of course it does.
You look at that $1,575 transaction cost and say, let's invest some CapEx, capital expenditure, to build software that drops the cost down to $500.
Seems like a win.
The incumbents are spending millions on this right now. They desperately want to save analyst hours.
Yeah.
But this is where the dossier introduces the most terrifying mathematical reality in the entire analysis.
Oh, the Jevons paradox.
The Jevons paradox.
Let's really unpack this because it's brilliant.
So William Stanley Jevons was a 19th century economist, and he observed that when technological improvements increased the efficiency of coal usage,
So they got better at burning coal.
right, it actually led to a massive increase in the total consumption of coal rather than a decrease.
Because it became cheaper and more useful.
Exactly. And the dossier proves that this exact paradox governs the private secondary market. They calculated the specific elasticity factor for this market, and it sits at 1.38.
Okay, let's translate that elasticity factor of 1.38 into real-world mechanics. What does that actually mean on the trading floor?
It means that demand in this market is not a static number.
Okay.
It is heavily, heavily suppressed by the sheer pain of the process.
Right, all those people abandoning deals.
For every 1% drop in transaction costs or friction that you achieve through your fancy new software, the overall volume of attempted transactions explodes by 1.38%.
Oh, wow.
When you make it even slightly cheaper and faster to transact, you unlock all of that pent-up demand.
So they all rush in.
Remember that 27% abandonment bucket we talked about?
Yeah.
All those exhausted sellers?
Yeah, the ones who gave up.
The second they hear the process is marginally better, they come rushing back into the pipeline.
Wait, let's look at the math on that. You're saying that successfully saving money and reducing friction actually breaks their systems faster.
It is a mathematical rebound trap. The efficiency dividend you just created by automating a few tasks gets immediately consumed by the massive surge in volume growth.
Because there's so much pent-up demand.
Yes, you saved your analysts a few hours per deal, but suddenly you have 38% more transactions flooding into your system, and they all immediately slam into the next unautomated human bottleneck.
It's the induced demand of highway expansion.
Exactly.
It's like a city council deciding to fix traffic by adding a lane to a congested highway. For a week, it flows better, but then people realize the highway is faster, so more people decide to drive instead of taking the train.
And then you're right back where you started.
You didn't solve the structural issue of transit, you just invited more cars to a wider traffic jam.
Yep.
We don't need a wider highway. I need a teleportation device.
That is the perfect way to contextualize it. Pathway B, digitizing the edges, it's a necessary step to fund future development, sure.
Yeah.
But if a platform stops there, it is signing its own death warrant.
It's a trap.
The dossier is incredibly clear on this. If you rely on Pathway B, you will be crushed under the weight of your own volume within 18 to 24 months. You'll be running a marginally tighter ship, but you'll be drowning in 1.38 times more water.
Which brings us to the core insight of the entire dossier, the teleportation device.
Here we go.
If efficiency alone will literally crush the system under its own induced volume, the only way out is a complete fundamental structural inversion.
Yes.
The manifesto calls this Pathway C disruptive vision.
This is the paradigm shift. This is where we stop trying to optimize a broken manual process and instead engineer a system that makes the manual process entirely obsolete.
We invert everything.
Everything.
We invert the labor model, we invert the CapEx spending, we invert the demand structure, we completely abandon the bilateral prison and move to centralized price discovery.
Centralized price discovery. That is the key phrase.
Right. Instead of a lone broker calling 3 buddies in his Rolodex, imagine a fully integrated digital auction engine.
Okay.
You, as a family office, list an $8 million private equity interest. The platform instantly broadcasts that position simultaneously to the entire $327 billion universe of available dry powder.
It programmatically exposes the asset to every single qualified institutional buyer whose mandate matches that specific asset class, geography, and vintage.
The leverage completely flips. Instantly, you create a bidding war.
Yeah.
Within 48 hours, you have 5, 6, 7 binding bids coming in. And the buyer can no longer look at the seller and demand a punishing 30% discount because the buyer knows there are 6 other institutions looking at the exact same data room.
It is an incredibly beautiful vision, but, and this is where my pragmatism has to throw a wet blanket over the excitement for a minute.
Uh-oh, here comes the reality check.
We have to address the ultimate real-world roadblock to making this happen. The dossier calls this Seam 2, the GP consent choke point.
the general partners.
Yeah.
The absolute gatekeepers of the asset class.
Exactly. You can write the code for the most elegant digital auction engine in the world. You can aggregate 20 hungry buyers fighting over an asset.
Yeah.
But you cannot run an auction, and you absolutely cannot execute the legal transfer of that asset if the general partner of the underlying fund objects to the sale.
And spoiler alert, they object almost constantly.
They hate them with a passion.
Why?
Look at it from the GP's perspective. They are trying to deploy capital and generate returns for the fund.
Right, that's their job.
Suddenly, one of their limited partners, an LP, decides they want out. For the GP, this triggers an administrative nightmare.
More paperwork for them.
It forces 20 to 40 hours of manual legal review on their staff.
Just for one transfer.
Just for one. They have to parse the original limited partnership agreement. They have to run deep background checks on the new buyer to ensure they aren't violating ERISA regulations or, triggering adverse tax consequences for the fund.
Not to mention the optics of it all. Like, a transfer is often viewed by the market as a negative signal, a sign that an LP is losing faith in the GP's strategy.
Right. And mechanically, it triggers right of first refusal or ROFR clauses.
Okay, what does that do?
A ROFR legally requires the GP to offer the asset to existing LPs before allowing an outside buyer to step in.
So they have to ping everyone already in the fund.
Exactly. It is an intensely manual, highly sensitive legal process. And here's the kicker. The GP receives absolutely zero financial compensation for doing all this extra work.
Wow. So they're just eating the cost.
They have no incentive to make transfers fast or easy. So what is their rational response?
They stall.
They drag their feet.
Yeah.
They take 30 days to respond to a basic email. They slow walk the compliance checks.
Which completely destroys the concept of a 48-hour high-speed auction.
It kills it dead. If you try to build the Pathway C auction engine without fundamentally solving the GP friction, you are building a supersonic bullet train that runs straight into a reinforced brick wall.
This is where I think the venture-proof analysis crosses from being just a really good critique into a literal masterclass in platform design.
It's so smart.
Because their solution to the GP problem is brilliant. Instead of trying to disrupt the GPs or bypass them or force them into compliance, the platform aligns with them.
Yes.
The dossier introduces the architecture for something called the GP value portal.
This is the linchpin of the whole model.
Instead of treating the general partner as an annoying bottleneck, you treat them as your most critical, high-value user.
Right.
The platform provides GPs with a dedicated, programmatic consent workflow. When an LP wants to sell, the GP logs into a dashboard. The platform has already ingested and mapped their specific limited partnership agreement.
So all the rules are already coded in.
Exactly. The platform has already run the automated compliance checks on the buyer. It tracks the ROFR timelines automatically.
That is massive.
It takes that 20 to 40 hours of manual legal misery and compresses it down to a near zero-touch automated checklist. You give the GP their time back while allowing them to maintain absolute total approval authority over who enters their fund.
It is a phenomenal psychological pivot. You turn the fiercest gatekeepers into your biggest advocates.
Right.
If a GP realizes that utilizing your Pathway C platform transforms a multi-week, unbillable legal headache into a secure 3-minute digital approval process, their behavior changes entirely.
They're going to love it.
They won't just passively allow the transfer to happen. They will actively update their fund documents to mandate that all their LPs use your platform for any future liquidity needs.
It's a total structural inversion.
Oh.
You solve the GP's operational headache, and in doing so, they hand you the keys to unlock the entire LP secondary market. You've completely inverted the power dynamic.
Now, getting the GP on board and building that centralized auction engine provides the essential foundation.
Sure.
But if we are really deep diving into the dossier's architecture, we have to look closely at how this actually functions in the wild.
Right, the mechanics of it.
Specifically, how does it solve the scale problem for smaller sellers? And critically, how do we ensure buyers actually trust the data enough to submit a blind bid?
Let's tackle the scale issue first, because this is a massive barrier, especially for family offices.
It's an enormous barrier. Let's look at a realistic scenario.
Okay.
You have a single-family office. They are holding an $8 million position in a top-tier real estate fund, and they need to exit to cover a tax liability.
So they are desperate.
They are desperate. but the institutional buyers with the deepest pockets, the massive secondary funds like Lexington Partners or Blackstone's strategic partners, they are deploying billions of dollars.
Right.
They enforce strict minimum transaction sizes, often $25 million or more. They won't even pick up the phone to discuss an $8 million position because the legal and due diligence costs of analyzing the asset aren't worth the yield on such a small slice.
So the family office is structurally excluded from accessing the exact pools of capital that are best positioned to absorb their asset.
Exactly.
Because they are small, they are forced to sell to mid-tier opportunistic buyers who demand massive punitive discounts.
The fragmentation punishes the small seller. So how does the Pathway C architecture actually fix this mechanically?
Through a completely novel aggregation mechanism, the dossier calls seller consortium formation.
Right.
It's mathematically beautiful. Imagine you have 5 different disconnected family offices. They each hold roughly a $10 million position in similar high-quality funds. Individually, they are totally invisible to the mega buyers. But the platform's algorithm identifies them, steps in, and offers to aggregate them. It combines those 5 fragmented $10 million sellers into one unified $50 million institutional-grade block.
Well, wait, I have to push back here.
Okay, go for it.
In theory, aggregating fragmentation sounds great, but practically, how do you coordinate 5 independent families?
Yeah.
What happens if they go to market as a $50 million block? Lexington submits a great bid, but at the absolute last second, one of the family offices gets cold feet and backs out.
I see what you're saying.
Does the entire $50 million consortium collapse? Because institutional buyers will not tolerate that kind of execution risk. They'll walk away.
And that is exactly why it can't be done manually by a broker.
Oh, interesting.
The platform utilizes algorithmic smart contract-style commitments. When the sellers agree to form the consortium, they pre-commit to a reserve price dynamically calculated by the platform.
So they're locked in.
Yes. If the bid clears the reserve, the execution is programmatic and binding. There is no backing out. The platform creates scale and execution certainty out of thin air.
That's fascinating.
Suddenly, Lexington and Blackstone are highly interested. They are actively competing against each other for that $50 million block.
Because the risk is gone.
Right. The platform has transformed individual desperation into structural bidding tension. Those family offices that would have been forced to swallow a 35% discount individually. By entering the market as a consortium, they clear at an 18% discount.
Wow.
The architecture just handed them hundreds of thousands of dollars in recovered wealth.
The mechanics of that are fascinating. And it leads perfectly into how the architecture handles the element of time.
Yeah, time is huge here.
We talked earlier about that brutal 60 to 90-day manual settlement window and the fated decay it causes.
The decaying option, right?
Right. Under the Pathway C model, the dossier introduces the standard of T+3 settlement. T+3. Settling a private market transaction in 3 days. In this industry, that sounds like witchcraft.
It sounds totally impossible until you look at the plumbing. How do they do it?
Right, ow.
First, as we discussed, you have the GP value portal handling the consent programmatically.
So that bottleneck is gone.
Second, the platform pre-caches all investor credentials.
What does that mean?
When an institutional buyer joins the platform, they complete a massive, rigorous KYC and AML vetting process once.
Just one time.
One time. That verified identity is encrypted and stored. When they win an auction, they don't have to start from scratch and mail in their passports again. The platform simply verifies the cryptographic token.
Oh, that saves weeks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You combine that with automated ROFR tracking and digital signatures, and you literally compress a 3-month bureaucratic nightmare into 72 hours.
You are erasing 85% of the risk window. The theta decay drops to near zero.
But here is the friction point from the buyer's perspective.
If I am an institutional buyer deploying $50 million on this platform, why should I trust the pricing?
That's a fair question.
We have to acknowledge that the 30% discount exists today for 2 reasons. Half of it is broker leverage, yes, but the other half is what we call an uncertainty discount.
The fear of the unknown.
Right. Buyers demand a premium because they genuinely do not trust the NAV reported by the GP, and they don't have deep transparency into the underlying assets of the fund.
Which is a completely fair and rational response. If you are buying a black box, you are going to demand a steep discount to protect yourself.
Absolutely.
But Pathway C anticipates this. It introduces automated valuation intelligence.
How does that work?
The platform doesn't just passively display whatever NAV the GP provided 6 months ago. It synthesizes that reported NAV with real-time market benchmarks, macroeconomic indicators, and comparable transaction data pulled from across the entire network.
So it's constantly updating.
Yes. It essentially builds a highly sophisticated, real-time pricing model that kills the uncertainty discount by giving buyers cross-reference data they can actually trust.
Okay, but let's look at human behavior for a second.
Always the skeptic. I love it.
I have to be. If you make it this incredibly easy to sell, if you can dump an asset in 3 days, won't the platform just become a dumping ground?
What do you mean?
Won't sellers quietly trying to offload their toxic, underperforming assets, creating a massive adverse selection problem? If a buyer gets burned once by buying a lemon that looked good on paper, they will log off and leave the platform forever. Trust is asymmetric. It takes years to build and seconds to destroy.
That is true. But the manifesto anticipates that exact behavioral risk. It proposes a structural safeguard called the adverse selection firewall.
Okay, an algorithmic firewall.
Yeah, it is an algorithmic mechanism designed to protect the buyer ecosystem. The system constantly monitors behavioral inputs.
Like what?
Like, if a seller logs on and indicates they need to exit a position within 48 hours and are willing to accept literally any price, the platform's algorithm flags that extreme urgency.
It sees the panic.
Right. It broadcasts a signal to the buyer saying, warning, the distressed pricing on this asset might reflect genuine underlying value concerns or toxic debt, not just a standard liquidity crunch.
Oh, that's smart.
It actively protects the buyers so they aren't tricked into catching a falling knife. And by structurally protecting the buyers, you maintain the long-term trust of the entire platform.
So if you successfully build this, if you have a trusted, high-speed, GP-aligned auction engine that aggregates sellers, that is undeniably a massive structural inversion.
It changes everything.
But the dossier is very clear on this next point. To prove this architectural inversion actually works, we have to completely throw out the vanity metrics that the incumbents currently use to measure success.
Oh, the dossier is aggressively critical of how the industry measures itself right now.
It has to be. If you look at an incumbent broker platform, their dashboard highlights things like total transactions completed or average processing time.
Right, vanity metrics.
But if the underlying system requires a 30% haircut, measuring your transaction volume is literally just measuring how efficiently you are losing your client's money.
That's so true.
You are tracking how fast you can push a desperate seller through a broken meat grinder.
Congratulations, we optimized the meat grinder.
No.
It now destroys wealth 10% faster.
Exactly. We need metrics that actually measure value creation.
Yeah.
And the venture-proof analysis introduces a true North Star metric for the industry.
The competing bid rate. I absolutely love the logic behind this.
Break it down.
Instead of measuring the sheer number of transactions, the platform measures competitive tension. The specific goal is to track the percentage of listed LP interests that receive 3 or more independent, binding, competing bids within a 48-hour window.
Right now, if you look at the manual market baseline for that metric, it is abysmal. It sits at maybe 15 to 20%.
That's terrible.
Most assets that go to market get 1 lowball bid, maybe 2, if the broker worked the phones really hard.
And the stated target for a mature Pathway C platform is to move that competing bid rate from the 20% baseline up to 65 to 80% within 18 months of launch.
That's a huge jump.
If you can consistently hit a 65% multi-bid rate, you have fundamentally transitioned the entire market. You have moved it from a buyer-advantaged predation environment into a state of true competitive equilibrium.
But the dossier goes even deeper into the operations because competing bid rate is ultimately a lagging outcome, right?
Right. It tells you what happened after the fact.
To manage the platform day to day, it introduces a highly actionable leading metric called the bid coverage ratio, or BCR.
Let's unpack the mechanics of the BCR.
So the bid coverage ratio is calculated by taking the number of qualified bids received on a specific asset and dividing it by the total number of active buyers on the platform who have a stated appetite for that exact category of asset.
Okay, so it's a ratio of who bid versus who could have bid.
Exactly. It tells the platform operators not just if they got bids, but how effectively they deployed their available capital network. Are the right buyers actually seeing and acting on the data?
That makes sense.
And here is the operational kicker. If the BCR on a live asset drops below 0.2, meaning you are failing to engage even 20% of the highly relevant buyers, the system automatically triggers a HITL intervention.
HITL.
Human in the loop.
Exactly. The algorithm pauses the auction and flags it for a senior human expert to review.
So it doesn't just let the auction fail.
Right. The human looks at the data room and asks, why isn't this asset clearing? Is the platform's pricing model miscalibrated? Is there a hidden liability in the fund documents that the algorithm completely missed?
It's a safety valve.
It is. It ensures that blind reliance on automation doesn't lead to a market failure.
And what does all of this engineering actually mean for the end user? Like, what is the ultimate financial result of hitting these precise metrics?
It's staggering. It really is.
Yeah.
By achieving this structural inversion, the data shows that the average market haircut shifts from 30% down to 15%.
That is not theoretical value. That is real, hard capital returning to balance sheets.
Let's put concrete numbers to it. Say you are an endowment holding a $1 million position.
Okay.
In the old bilateral prison, you go to a broker, wait 90 days, and it finally clears for maybe $600,000 to $700,000.
If you're lucky.
Right. On the Pathway C platform, with 5 competing bids driving up the price and T+3 settlement eliminating the risk discount, that exact same interest clears for $850,000 to $950,000.
You are recovering roughly $150,000 to $350,000 in raw value per transaction.
I am constantly amazed by the scale of the value unlock here. And think about the platform economics, right? If a new Pathway C platform is processing $500 million in annual secondary volume, that is $75 million in raw capital handed directly back to the sellers.
It's massive.
And if the platform captures just a 20% performance fee on the savings they generated, that creates $15 million in pure, highly defensible platform revenue.
Wow.
It is the ultimate alignment of incentives. You build a massive, profitable business specifically by saving your clients tens of millions of dollars.
Which brings us to the final and probably most crucial question regarding the legacy and the future of this entire analysis.
Okay, what's that?
If this architecture is the obvious future, and the underlying mathematics clearly dictate that it is, why on earth haven't the massive trillion-dollar incumbents built it yet?
Right. Why hasn't a giant like iCapital or Blackstone's secondary group already deployed this? They have thousands of engineers and practically unlimited capital.
Because of incumbent vulnerability, they are structurally and economically locked out of Pathway C. The dossier does a brutal replication analysis on the major players. It points out that giants like iCapital are built entirely around deep, entrenched integrations with wealth management platforms and GP-centric primary reporting.
Okay.
Their entire core revenue model relies on maintaining the very bilateral intermediation we are talking about killing.
So if they were to build a transparent, low-friction auction engine, they would instantly commoditize their own profit margins.
Exactly. And look at Blackstone's GS2, their strategic partners wing. They operate as a buyer in the secondary market.
Right. They're the ones buying the distressed assets.
Their entire economic model, their massive yield, depends entirely on acquiring LP interests at distressed 30% discounts.
Wow.
If they built a competitive price discovery platform that eliminated those discounts and drove prices up to fair market value, they would directly cannibalize their own acquisition margins.
It is the absolute textbook definition of the innovator's dilemma.
Yeah.
They physically cannot build the solution without destroying the very mechanisms that currently make them rich.
The barrier preventing them from innovating isn't technological. It is their incentive structure.
That's a huge blind spot for them.
It is. The dossier estimates that because of this internal conflict, the incumbents have a 36-month replication gap.
36 months. That's 3 years.
That means there is a massive 3-year window for a new, neutral entrant, a platform with absolutely no legacy revenue to protect, to come in, build the infrastructure the market actually needs, and completely capture this space.
So summarizing the legacy of this dossier,
Yeah.
to me, it proves definitively that the $4 trillion illiquidity crisis is a choice.
It really is.
It is not a law of macroeconomic physics.
Yeah.
We have accepted these brutal haircuts and these agonizing 90-day delays for decades because we were told that's just how private markets worked.
But it's an infrastructure failure.
Exactly. And bad infrastructure can be rebuilt.
The manual waste is quantifiable, the Jevons paradox elasticity is exponential, and the architectural solution, Pathway C, is mathematically clear.
Which leaves me with a final provocative thought for you to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive.
I'm ready.
If transparent, T+3 liquidity is proven to be technologically possible right now, through platforms like the one outlined here. How long will it be until LP investors, like the massive pension funds and endowments, start legally demanding Pathway C infrastructure as a baseline fiduciary duty before they ever commit a single dollar to a new fund?
If the market knows the pipes can be fixed, you can't keep pretending the vault is permanently sealed.
The days of accepting the bilateral prison are numbered. Thank you so much for joining us on this Innovation Unpacked deep dive. We will see you next time.